Hello, family. I know that the last week or so everybody's been focused and zeroed in on the Titan, where the five people were on there and it imploded, killing all five people while they were going to see the Titanic. But it was a story at least a week before that is hardly being even talked about. And I want to bring that story to light today. That's the story of over 750 people being on a boat in Greece and it capsized and then turning over. And so far, they only have 104 survivors. Hi, my name's Travis. Let's get into this story. So I'll be reading from my computer because I want to get this story accurate and right, and I didn't want to touch on it when it first came out because I didn't have all the information. And what I don't want to do is give people the wrong information. So here we go. Reports from survivors of the migrant ship disaster off Kalamata have raised doubts about the accounts given by the Greek Coast Guard. Human rights organizations are calling for an independent investigation. The area surrounding the Harbor Administration building in Kalamata, Greece, is deserted now. But a week or so ago, the place was filled with hundreds of people from many European countries looking for relatives and friends who might have been caught in the catastrophic naval accident off the coast of this city in southern Greece. But even though teams are still working at the site of the disaster, any hope of finding survivors at this point has long since evaporated. In a cafe near the building, a Syrian man of about 40 takes some papers from his briefcase. He has been living in Germany for many years. He said with a slight Bavarian accent, he does not want his name published. On his hand, he is holding copies of his 16-year-old nephew's identity papers. We were last to contact him 3 weeks ago. I found out on Facebook that he was on that ship. He told DW he had been to the Harbor Administration every day to look for any information about his nephew and a friend traveling with him. But their names were not registered at the hospital where some of the 104 survivors are still being treated, or in the list of those who have already been taken to a camp near Athens. At the hospital, they didn't give me any information. They said it was a matter of data protection. On Monday night, the Coast Guard found 3 more bodies in the water. So far, 81 bodies have been retrieved altogether and now have been identified. Greek authorities have started taking DNA samples from relatives. The man in the cafe near the Harbor Administration can't say yet whether his nephew is among the dead. He won't be able to send his sister in Syria any news of her son today either. This afternoon, he has to fly back to Germany to work. He would have liked to have helped his nephew start a better life there, he says. Although Syria barely gets a mention in the news bulletin in the West, the situation is still difficult there. The man says people have had enough of war and political chaos. Young people want to leave the country and make something of their lives somewhere else. When asked who is responsible for the disaster, he says, "We are all responsible." For so many years, he says, there has been no solution for Syrians or for the many people who hope to gain protection in Europe and risk their lives to obtain it. So many dead people in the world watches on. So many dead people in the world watches on, he says. Survivors behind barbed wire. About a half an hour drive north of Athens in Alaska to a registration center for asylum seekers financed by the EU and the administration of Greece. Here behind barbed wire and electric turnstiles manned by security guards is where most of the survivors of the accident are being housed. Behind barrier tape, a few journalists are milling around hoping to speak with them sooner or later. The registration procedure is fast according to the Greek Migration and Asylum Ministry. By Wednesday, 41 men had completed the formalities and were able to leave the camp, but none of them wanted to talk to the press. We have advised people not to speak to journalists. But the situation at the camp creates a different impression. From a brief conversation with DW was able to have with refugees, it emerges that they are worried that their asylum cases will be negatively impacted if they contact the journalists. One person told DW that he was not allowed to leave the camp. It is possible that survivors of the disaster were also put under pressure earlier this week after a video appeared in social media in which two men from Pakistan looked into a camera through a fence and made serious allegations against the Greek Coast Guard. According to them, the refugees' boat sank after the Coast Guard tied 2 ropes to it and tried to tow it. The video caused a major outcry. A Syrian survivor from the camp, whose DW was able to contact by telephone with the aid of an interpreter, confirmed the account given by the 2 Pakistani men. We were pulled by another ship and capsized. The man said in Kurdish, but he was unable to say what sort of ship it was. The Greek Coast Guard denies these accusations. According to its accounts of the event, the Coast Guard vessel tried to attach a cable to the refugee boat, but people on board threw it into the water. The Ministry for Naval Affairs, in which the Coast Guard answers, rejected DW's request for an interview. Last Sunday, June 18th, British broadcasters published an article that raised even more questions. Using data from a website that follows ship movements, the report found that the ship with the migrants on board barely changed positions in the 7 hours before the catastrophe. But the Greek Coast Guard had stated that the vessel had been following a constant course toward Italy. So somebody is not telling the truth. There is also a question as to why there is no video footage of the incident, even though the Coast Guard boat is equipped with all types of cameras. The Greek Coast Guard has previously faced accusations of deliberately disabling vessels carrying migrants in order to stop them from entering the European asylum system. Many such cases have been documented. I really hope that's not what happened. Athens nevertheless insists that it adheres to the law, even in the case of last week's incident. The fact that Greek state prosecutors have lost an investigation is not enough for Chloe Powers of the Border Violence Monitoring Network. For many years, this NGO has been documenting human rights violations at the EU external borders of Greece. She says that all the investigations that Athens has carried out on its own up till now have always concluded in favor of the Greek Coast Guard. That doesn't mean that's going to happen this time. Just saying. Powers did not think the Greek government showed much interest in casting light on the current case. She says Greek authorities are focusing on the 9 Egyptians who were on the vessel and are currently in pre-trial detention on suspicion of being human traffickers. For Powers, this is no more than an attempt to criminalize migration itself. In fact, Powers feels the disaster resulted mostly from an EU policy of deterrence toward Islam seekers. What is needed in terms of creating more transparency, safeguarding the fundamental rights, and addressing systematic border violence is truly independent monitoring mechanisms, she said. Such mechanisms must include the involvement civil society actors, the mechanisms to trigger and follow through with independent investigations when such human rights violations are perpetrated by state actors. It was supposed to be over 750 people on this ship. They have recovered 104 people alive. And so far, only 81 dead people. This was truly a catastrophe. And it's something that went under the radar, especially after everything happened with the submarine that was going to the Titanic. But these people were just as important, if not more, than the billionaires. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention that did happen. Thoughts and prayers go out to the families. It really was a catastrophe. Over 700 people on that boat that was only supposed to hold 400. We must live today like there is no tomorrow. Because for a lot of those people, they did not wake up that morning, maybe all of them, thinking that was going to be their last day. If you like anything I said in this video, hit the like button, subscribe, please leave a comment. I'm going to get back to my normal videos, but the last few weeks, there's been a lot of news that I just had to report. But I will get back on track to the things that I normally talk about. Anything you'd like to hear me discuss that is in my niche, please leave me a comment, and I will definitely make a video on it. Lieberman out.